The very softest thing of all can ride like a galloping horse through the hardest of things, like water penetrating rock. And so the invisible enters in. That is why I know it is wise to act by doing nothing. And how very few understand this. People teach in the world what I know to be true. If you live violently, that is how you will die. Whoa. Quite a turn there at the end. Let's come back to that and we can start with the other pieces of the verse, which probably shouldn't be something that's super shocking to you either because you've heard a bunch of verses of the Tao before, or you're just sort of overall familiar with the context of the Tao often being related to water. But in this verse, we're talking about, again, the softness, the yielding, the ability to bend and overcome the hard things in life. The hardship that the Tao talks about things like the actual physical things. You think about rocks, you think about mountains. And I think that's very translatable to literally challenging things in life and how we say, I had a hard day, or this is going to be a very hard thing to do. What you mean by that is it's a challenge. But what the Tao is saying is instead of sort of taking that very modern day self-help, motivation above all approach that says and tells you you got to power through, you got to enforce your will, you have to subdue the world to your wishes. The Tao is saying the way to accomplish and overcome those hard things is to remain soft. I do get the sense that there's a little bit of pushback in the world from this idea of you have to be hard and you have to be tough and you just got to toughen up, right? Grow up. And I think that the Tao is constantly reminding us that softness eventually overcomes all. And so if you find yourself maybe being a little bit more emotional, a little bit of a softer person, maybe gentler, that these things are actually wildly beneficial and help you overcome the hard parts of life. Now the Tao goes on to say, like water penetrating rock, and so the invisible enters in. Again, another portion of a verse talking about the invisible nature of the Tao, that the Tao is nothing. It is this invisible force, and from it comes one. We spoke about this in a recent verse, how the Tao gives birth to the one. Well, it gives birth to the one because it is itself nothing. It is emptiness. And in this way, the Tao is continuously reminding us, empty your mind, unlearn things. Vacate all of the preconceived notions and ideas that you have. And it goes on to give us a very wu-wei type of portion of the verse that says, that is why I know it is wise to act by doing nothing. How very few understand this. This has definitely become more popularized in recent years, the idea of not forcing or not intentionally acting on things, but letting yourself flow. And this verse is very much reinforcing that idea. Now, this last part of the verse seemingly comes out of nowhere. If you live violently, that is how you will die. Well, we know that the Tao is also often talking in paradoxes or opposites. And so another way to interpret what the Tao is saying here is if you live gently and lovingly, that is how you will die. Because that is the opposite of this living violently. So sure, we have plenty of examples in the real world of ways in which people who have a violent life end up dying very violently. And we tend to hear about those stories on the news or in true crime documentaries or what have you, but it's because those are the odd things that happen. The news isn't going to talk about the things that are commonplace or mundane seeming. But what's mostly happening is people aren't dying violently because they're living violently. What's generally happening is people are maybe dying in some other way that is similar to how they're living their life. And I know that that's not always the case. And of course, if something is the case, there has to be examples of it not being the case. That is part of the paradox. But you can't necessarily control that. And so the thing that is within your scope and that you can control is how you choose to live your life. Gentle, yielding, like water. And that may just reflect how your life comes to end as well.